In the year 2000, my wife and I went off on a trip to Tibet and Nepal. I recorded this on an old standard definition camcorder. It was state of the art then, and left it to rot on a DVD. At the time, we thought that DVDs would last forever, but apparently not. I'm afraid the sound is rather dodgy, and the colour has faded, and it all looks a little bit pixelated. It's a far cry from 4K. Nevertheless, I thought it was interesting because here you will see me sans grey hair and grey beard, and my wife in some rather startling eye makeup.
You have to go to the city of Chengdu in order to get to Tibet. Chengdu is reputedly one of the most polluted cities in the world. The Chinese, however, see things differently.
Well, it must be at some poet place because the sign that says "Be civil to the shrine of poetry." We'll find out later what that means.
As it turned out, we were in the home of Dufu. Dufu is one of China's greatest poets. He was writing about the time the Anglo-Saxons were settling in Roman Britain, though the guide forgot to tell us anything about him.
Black, that means the honest. Honest. There was a very popular TV show called Judge Zhao, and he was a blackface. Yeah, so picture made.
Picture, yeah, made to show at the same time the dialogue. Can you imagine another use?
Other than for making a sound?
Making the sound.
You mean a use other than making a sound?
Cooking.
So clever you are.
Well,
Yes.
flattery will get you a long way.
In time.
Very young. Did you hear that, Lawrence?
No.
This is just a few months old, this building.
Oh, really?
Here,
And as we walked through the gardens, not only did we not discover anything about poetry, but we discovered it at great length.
Contains 3 parts: the lead, and the cup, and the tree. Yeah, the tree. We organize it. We do best things. So it just Dubai is the king of the kingdoms.
In the end, we thought that Dufu was probably the man who wrote the signs. At 4 o'clock in the morning, we were not at our best. But that didn't stop the guide from telling us how much sicker we might be in Tibet's thin atmosphere. We were greeted by Sedang. Whether that was one name or two, we never really discovered. He didn't come from the same guide school as the Chengdu guide. He spoke little, understood less, but probably knew what he was talking about. Unfortunately, we never quite got him to let us know.
This also they keep animal, that's cow sky.
Yes.
Blue for sky, white for cow, the yellow for earth.
Why does the bridge have a guard on it?
Sorry?
The bridge has a guard.
Yeah.
Yes, why?
Chinese military.
So they have a military area around here?
Yeah, because someone this time.
Oh, okay.
Well, that cleared that up. Nevertheless, the children knew how to make themselves understood.
Well, here we are on the roof of the world. Beside me are my oxygen cylinders, and we've just been to the Hard Yak Cafe to have a yak burger. Yak burgers are Interesting in as much as they taste just like beef burgers. They're a little bit, perhaps a little bit more solid, but tasty nonetheless. And now we're contemplating catching a taxi to go off to the Potala.
That's not in Chinese either.
酒康是不是打这是？行吗？行吗？
Plaza. It's a magical name for what looked at first like a very unmagical Chinese garrison town. But then we drove along the road that the British Army had marched in 1905 and staged wheelbarrow races while they tried to work out why they invaded in the first place. And as we passed through the gate that the Chinese had blown up for their invasion, our excitement mounted. Surely there is nothing else quite as splendid as the Potala Palace. Note how cleverly the Chinese flag is positioned to appear in every photograph, and how Western ideas are making rapid headway.
Two, please.
Well, it's Monday today, and we've decided to make our ascent on the Potala, and we're huffing and we're puffing, and Mama's getting over his food poisoning now, so he's huffing and puffing and feeling all peculiar in addition. I don't suppose we're even halfway up yet, so this is an excuse to take a break, squeeze a few more oxygen molecules into the bloodstream, and we'll continue.
Yes, I'm afraid a dodgy egg from Chengdu was now insisting that I not stray too far from a lavatory. I think that the Tibetans are very image conscious. As soon as I would turn the viewing screen of my camera to face them, they immediately gathered around to see how they might look to the rest of the world.
They're on television.
We're inside the palace now. We have no idea which way to go. I don't think there's any point looking up the guide.
Right, of course we've also seen the Dalai Lama's throne. It would have cost $450 to film it, so we forewent the privilege of that. But essentially it's a very unprepossessing looking item, smothered in yak butter and with yak butter candles in front of it, and behind it the works of the fifth Dalai Lama. The fifth Dalai Lama is the guy who unified the state underneath the Dalai Lamas, essentially, isn't it? Made it a theocracy. I'm trying to look at the camera. I'm trying to look at the camera and pronounce theocracy.
See, I can't pronounce.
And breathe at the same
And breathe at the same time. And ward off food poisoning, exhaustion. And as you can see, it's a peculiarly exotic place, and it made all the more exotic by this Czech umbrella that features very heavily in the filming of this at the moment.
But you will notice that this palace is put together in bits and pieces with lots of different layers and slightly different styles, just in the same way as the Tibetans wear their clothes.
Ah, yes, that's true.
Yes.
It's true. You notice this little item here. If I can point the camera without dropping it. From Sichuan, from the Chinese benefactors who peacefully liberated the place. Not only was the food poisoning and the altitude playing havoc with my intestines and my mental faculties, but it was also playing havoc with my camera technique. Further to that, water seeped in and damaged everything that I shot from now on, which means that what you're seeing now is the result of some very, very deft editing. We managed to survive the climb. Lhasa is a changing city, but perhaps it isn't changing very rapidly. Despite the motor car and other conveniences like raincoats and Chinese shopping malls, if you really want to shop in Lhasa, the Barker is still the place to come. But you have to watch yourself in the Barker. Smart operators can spot suckers from miles away.
It was just when you pick it up and find it.
Well, I think you've got ripped off there myself.
Too, but you know, I never have been able to bargain, and she was rather nice.
The Barker is a place where you can watch a whole different universe pass by. And sometimes it watches you back. Well, we might need to. At the centre of the Barker is the Jokhan Palace, the most sacred temple in Tibet, and one circles clockwise around for religious reasons and to buy a handy souvenir of your pilgrimage. Tibetans are not traditionally Buddhist. Originally, they had a religion called Bon, where essentially the temples were the same, except you circled it anti-clockwise. To compensate for souls spinning in both directions, Tibetans are quite happy to listen to several tunes at once. Tibetans may be Buddhists, but they are not vegetarians. The market smells of meat, spices and yak butter, which is used for everything from flavouring your tea to greasing your hair to worshipping the millions of gods one has to encounter before understanding that there are no gods for the enlightened. Just an awful lot of different cheeses.
I was trying to figure out what it was, and you weren't able to ask.
罗马对线呢，它真有点那么大对线，那。Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the room of the world, Tibet.
Oh, we've recovered. Well, I've recovered anyway. I never had to recover really, but I had to recover. And we're at the usual sort of cultural show right this moment.
Singing and dancing are greatly enjoyed by the Tibetan people.
Tibetans are musical, but the visiting Chinese party carders and carpet-bagging businessmen are perhaps looking for entertainment that is even more basic than the kind provided here. Unlike many simple rural peoples, Tibetans are not shy. They do not have the concept of face as the Chinese do. One might even say that they really don't give a damn what you think. They're just going to go out there and have a good time no matter what. But in Lhasa, one is never far from the political realities of Tibet, nor from the obvious fact that despite China's attempts to modernize Tibet after their own fashion, most Tibetans view their lives as a pilgrimage and a shopping expedition. At the gates of the Jokand Palace, the pilgrims perform their rituals, and the Chinese perform theirs. Tibetan monks are not unaware of worldly considerations. They may be meditative, but they are not contemplative monks. They like nothing more than to make an awful lot of noise, and they like to eat and drink. And the pilgrims, they also are of a gregarious nature. Inside the Jokand, monks and pilgrims and tourists mingle in a sort of holy scrummage. It isn't forbidden to film inside the Jokand temple, but it isn't made easy for you. There is hardly any light and the pilgrims jostle and crowd around you. One false move and you can easily step upon a pilgrim lying flat on their face on the ground.
didn't think stepping on a pilgrim was the right thing to do.
The Jokhan is built over the heart of a giant demoness who straddles Tibet and makes it a harsh country to tame. Each temple within the Jokhan is dedicated to Buddhas and demons and the historical founders of Tibet and the Buddhist religion in Tibet. King Songtsan Gampo, with his Nepalese wife, and Princess Wenchen, his Chinese wife, built the Jokhan and the Tibetan state over the body of this giant demoness whose heart now lies tamed beneath our feet in the palace. But which statue was Dzongtsen and which Tsongkhapa, the founder of Tibetan Buddhism, and which was Buddha himself in his past, present, or future manifestations, was lost to us in swirls of incense and the smoke from burning yak butter candles.
It's cool.
I seem to have recovered from my bout of food poisoning. I guess that was it. Dodgy omelette from Chengdu. So we're up here on the Jokhan Palace, and it's really quite extraordinary, isn't it? This is just as how you imagine Tibet to be like, you know, monks and trombones being played in the background there, and if you can look around me, you can see the Himalayas with snow-capped mountains. Yeah, well, where else is there? There isn't.
Where's Everest then? Which one is Everest?
You can't see it from here.
Okay.
That's about 100 kilometres up there, somewhere. And behind me is the Barker, which is the marketplace in front of the Jokhan Palace. And see, also behind me, over on the top there, is the Patala, which we went in there yesterday morning in the rain. And
Yes, precisely. But that poor old soul had lost a considerable amount of bodily fluid and was suffering from altitude sickness. So I suppose we should forgive his ramblings and shaky camera hand. In the thin atmosphere of Lhasa, it is not hard to imagine why the monks are noted for their visions, and believe it is quite possible, after blowing a few horns, to float from mountain peak to mountain peak.
that's right.
And we're taking lots and lots of photographs, lots and lots of film. Actually, Lawrence is taking sound rather than vision at the moment, because there's some monks behind us who've been probably making themselves quite dizzy blowing these horns.
The romantics among you may well have been under the impression that life in Shangri-La was one long, peaceful, commune with nature. But considering that the Jokhan's population of extremely noisy monks are a mere shadow of what they were for the 1400 years prior to the Cultural Revolution, I'd say that things have been a lot quieter since the introduction of the motor car. It was a relief to get away from the heady intensity of the Jokhan and go to the peace of Sera Monastery.
Are the numbers still going down?
Hello?
Are the numbers
In the 14th century, who came to Tibet?
Where one could look with one's third eye into the heart of the Buddha. What was that I said about peaceful? Every day the monks debate the finer points of the Buddhist scriptures. When a particularly good point is made, the monk cuts the air and hammers home his point with a slap. There might also be debating the finer points of Manchester United, for all we know, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. The monks are, in fact, great show-offs. But then everyone in Tibet seems to want their brief moment in the limelight.
Right, this is the Gandan Monastery, isn't it, which is about 30 miles away from Lhasa. And
500 metres high.
and on a road which is barely existing, and practically straight up the mountain. We're surrounded by.
Not for the faint-hearted, which is what I'm feeling at the moment.
Yes.
Explorer, would you like to join me in a walk back down this mountain, or do you want to get into that
No, I'll
fun
walk down.
ride? That's what I check.
Gandan Monastery was founded in the 15th century by Tsongkhapa, about 1,000 years after Gampo founded Tibet, though the two of them seem to run together in Tibetan time. And the monastery we're looking at now, although it looks like it could have been built in the 15th century, is in fact only a matter of a few years old. The Red Guards having blown up the original in the Cultural Revolution.
This holy book is all thank you.
Gandan actually means the Western Paradise. This is where the Buddha of the future resides. Gandan Monastery is also where Tsongkhapa was buried, and his preserved body was blown up by the bombs and artillery of the Red Army. Some of his bits are in that red building over there. If you were rich enough, you could have your body disposed of in an even more alarming fashion than poor old Tsongkhapa's. On the mountaintop, sky burials take place. There, the butcher class earn a little extra, eviscerating and hacking to pieces the bodies of the wealthy.
Yes, she's going to go back.
Okay, I'm at Gandan Monastery. I've just been around it. I left Lawrence and the guide to climb up the top of the mountain, but they took the wrong route, so they come back down, and we're sat by the bus stop eating our lunch, and it's baking hot. There isn't a single piece of shade here except underneath the bus, and I doubt anyone would look to check that you were not under there when they left, so there's nothing else to do but to sit here in the sunshine and bake, really. Oh, it's beautiful up here. It's fresh, birds are singing. That's about it really, isn't it?
Well, if you can see the Gandan Monastery in the background there, you will notice, well, you probably can't see it, you will notice that there's various bits of it that look like they were blown up, which of course they were. In the Cultural Revolution, which we are constantly told about, everything was blown up. Gandan Monastery was completely destroyed. And there was 1,000 monks living there. You might think that 5,000 peace-loving monks would have posed no threat to the average Red Army, but I suspect that these monks were not necessarily peace-loving, were more like an army in waiting, I think. the monks all look rather like a bunch of skinheads to me, and just as much trouble, I should think. But they're managing to rebuild the whole thing, and it's taken them 2 years to build what's there at the moment. And I'm losing my breath here. We're walking down because Helen can't stand another bumpy ride. Well, I'm far tougher than you. I can stand these things. Yes, we're going for a trek in the mountains. Of course, our guides are hiding away up in a hut there, eating their lunch. I think the word guide is a bit of a misnomer. The sort of the guy that hangs around us whilst we roam around. I think that's more like it, isn't it? And we're waiting for him to work out how to get our Nepali visa, which seems to be causing a bit of a problem, largely because the Nepalis say, come back at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Now then, around about 11 o'clock we should be on a boat to the Samye monastery. But our guide seems to think that this is not going to cause a problem. Yeah, I think that's it. They'll probably just put the foot down and drive like wild men. And the road should be, well, something not too dissimilar to this, we reckon. So it should be fun.
You can see the zigzag. See?
I think we'll, yeah, I think we'll clamber over that a bit. It seems far safer than actually going in the van, which has been out of petrol since we got in, and seems to have problems starting. I don't think it's acclimatised yet to the weather, altitude. I'm blaming the thin air. We have discovered that the Tibetans also aren't acclimatised to the altitude. They get just as out of breath as we do. But the thing is, they think that's normal.
Goodbye.
Can we keep walking?
Sorry?
Can we keep walking? Yes, I mean, is there a time that we have to get back to Lhasa?
Yeah.
What time?
How long you will work?
Well, we'd like just to keep walking because it's only 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock?
Now is 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And if we take the car now,
Yeah.
we'll be back in Lhasa at 3 o'clock. We'd much rather be walking down here for another hour, wouldn't we?
Yeah. 1 hour?
Is that okay?
Yeah, okay.
Is that all right?
Sure, yeah.
Because it's so nice here.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
friends here are gathering what they called incense. The entire mountainside is covered in this herb, and it smells a little of camphor and seems to flavour everything from the tea to the sweet desserts they make from yak cheese.
Now we're taking the shortcut that they recommended, so we might be lost forever here. And our van driver has driven on ahead, and he's going to be waiting at the bottom to collect us, though he can't quite work out why anybody should want to walk down here. How the inconvenience as far as he's concerned. And as you can see, we are now surrounded by yaks. And we hope that the yaks are friendly. Now we're walking to that village down there. We've walked down from the monastery and we're about halfway. And we probably would be less tired if people didn't keep trying to show us shortcuts. Which may be shorter, but they're much steeper. Yeah.
It's taken 2 hours to get down the mountain. And if we hadn't gone the shortcut route, I guess it would take 4 hours, wouldn't it?
Quite possibly, quite possibly.
We met some 4 girls coming down. Yeah. We were collecting.
After a 2-hour wait for our Nepali visas, we rushed to catch the ferry to Samye. Seidang insisted on playing us what he called English music. It seemed to have a very strange effect upon us all.
Did you notice the music?
Yes.
All of the wild in the wild.
Out in the hills the previous day, we had managed to burn the tops of our heads, which is why we are now wearing rather silly hats.
There were 2 options in the shop. There was this kind of hat, oh no, 3, or a cowboy hat. A big cowboy hat.
Yeah.
Like the one in the Nepali beaver office yesterday. Yeah. That kind of hat. And then there was baseball caps. We're not baseball cap people.
Yeah.
I don't know how we managed it, but we bagged the best seats on this truck. You would almost think that nobody had ever had the idea of riding inside with the driver before. The Samye Monastery was the first Buddhist monastery in Tibet. It was founded in the 7th century by Indian scholars, and to this day it stays closer to the Indian way of Buddhism. After that journey, we felt in need of some refreshment. And there is nothing better than a steaming cup of yak butter tea. It tastes like English tea with a slab of camembert dissolved in it. And unusually for a tourist, I took a deeply unimpressive liking to it.
The first floor used for doing the cultural revolution is the logo Bali.
Yeah. This is
Oh yes.
This stage is all of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
The center statue is the second one. This statue is the original statue. Original statue.
That's original.
The original statue. Another one all of renovation. Yes, they have mandala.
Yes. Really.
Outside.
Yes.
There comes a time when one really has to say that one has seen enough temples. One was bullied into submission, chanted out and looking for wide open spaces and a breath of fresh air. Amongst other things. This time, I'm afraid, we were bumped from business class into tourist class. As you can see, Tibet's climate makes one do the strangest things. One wears thick, warm clothing and smears oneself with suntan blocker.
we have just arrived at Sedang, and we've been told that we are not allowed to go outside of the hotel because the PSB will punish us. Because we asked, does that mean we can't walk outside at all? And we were told, yes, you can walk outside.
Please explain who the PSB are.
Yes, the PSB are the Public Security Bureau.
Outside of Sedang is Chongye. This valley is reputedly the place where the first field in Tibet was tilled. It is also the place where the first kings were buried. And we are visiting the burial mound of none other than Songtsen Gampo himself.
No, kings.
Yeah. So, as usual, we're not quite sure who is the attraction here.
Because this place is a holy place.
Yeah.
So you choose of this.
Holy places.
Yeah, in Tibet are a lot of holy places. Yeah.
So why this one?
Perhaps we should not be too surprised, but we invariably are surprised how so-called guides omit to actually telling us anything about anywhere that we ever go.
They send someone off.
Helen made a very brave attempt to discover how people living in these isolated villages did their shopping.
With a lorry full of clothes in the village.
Yeah.
Which? Do they have to go to Dzang, or do the Dzang business people come to them?
Yeah.
Both. Which?
How to say it's everything. Gold, food.
Yes, but in England, for example, in isolated villages, often a van would come from the nearest town full of clothes and pots and pans and bring them to the village and sell in the village. The villagers didn't have to go to the nearest town to do their shopping.
Yeah.
They do that here?
Yes.
There you have it then. Pots, pans, clothes are all bought in a tiny English village somewhere, and the number 2 bus is taken to the Yarlung Valley, Tibet, where they are delivered straight to your door.
You had a net curtain in there.
Is it good?
Yes.
Was it better than expected?
Yes. Well, because they're not smelly. Better than some of Hong Kong toilets, actually.
Okay, tell us where we are.
Where are we? Yarlagung Palace.
Yarlagung Palace.
Something like that. The first major construction in Tibet, built in the 7th century. First palace of Tibet. Knocked down in 1959, rebuilt in 1985.
Well, she was almost right. This is, in fact, the Yambulagang Palace. Originally built about the 7th century in the time of Songtsan Gampo, but legend has it that it was built 2,000 years ago for a mythical king, Nientri Zenpo. Also, the holy texts of Buddha are said to have fallen from the sky onto the temple. In short, its history is all rather garbled.
This sound was bird, you know.
It's bird sound?
Yes.
The bird?
Yes.
Ah, yes. What's the sign of spring?
People in Sangha, they really want to get some money. Yes, absolutely.
Down on the street.
Tibet is a massive country with a colourful and complicated history. And we had barely begun to encounter any of it before we found ourselves at the end of our exploration. Zedang, our guide, who, as we discovered when the police stopped us, was operating without a licence, no doubt having not passed his English exams yet, took us back to his home for lunch.
Yes.
There we met his wife and child, and Helen managed to get food poisoning, and thus completed the cycle of our journey.
It's raining very hard.
Yeah. The afternoon, Lhasa is raining.
Phew. Well, we've had a very bumpy and dusty ride, and there's been hailstones and rain, and there's been, well, every sort of weather but snow. There was snow upon
the tops of the mountains, but we never ran into that. But we've had everything else thrown at us as we came along the road there. And back in Lhasa now. Anyway, it's been thoroughly exhausting, largely because of the bumpy ride. And I'm very glad that we haven't actually decided to drive all the way down to Nepal, and that we're actually flying down there. And we're doing that at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Hopefully we'll be able to get up for that time. And hopefully I'll have washed my hair. Well, next report, Kathmandu, I suspect.
Not quite. Next report was actually above the Himalayas in search of Everest. One of the large lumps of rock was Everest, though the pilot failed to inform us which. But rumours circulated, and we rushed from one side of the plane to the other, pointing our cameras at anything genuinely big.
That's an old-fashioned Tibetan greeting, isn't it?
It's not a...
Yeah.
Kathmandu is a swirling mass of people, cows, cars, dust and monkeys.
This is the first time, yes.
Yes, yeah.
It swallows you up and hurls random images at you of greasy spoon restaurants, tablecloths, rickshaws and lost tourists.
Going towards Durbar Square, we think, but we've been sidetracked by some shopping, so I don't know where we are just at the moment.
Now this could be one of the stupas around the city connected with that Tibetan king Dzongzeng Gambo. One of his wives was Nepali, and she was one of the people who introduced Buddhism to Tibet. But whether this was erected by her, or in honour of her, or 1,000 years later by a local dentist who had nothing whatsoever to do with her, we could not find out. It is hard to sort out one thing from another, especially in a city without official street names or addresses. Everything merely is whatever people tell you it is, and one story is run into the next so that one really discovers little in any systematic fashion.
I lost you for a moment.
Roughly, the history of Nepal starts around about the time of the collapse of the Roman Empire, when something seems to have happened in all parts of Asia and Europe. Mongol people found their way into the Nepal Valley and established a number of small city-states. Settlement, though, had been taking place ever since the sudden draining of a large lake in the valley, and so the Nepali invaders are ethnically mixed with Aryan types from northern India, Burmese, Tibetans and even Chinese.
Debbie, he's a guide.
It's okay, thank you.
Here we are in Durbar Square. The big building there is the Marju Deval, built in 1690 by the mother of King Bhupatindra Mala of one of the city-states called Bhaktapur. And just around the corner lives a living goddess, a tradition dating back to a bit of child molesting indulged in by one of the kings. In fact, there are a number of temples dedicated to child-eating demons, conveniently situated beside primary schools. No rest for the tourist, we have to get back on track. There's 1,000 years of history that we've got to visit all within the next 20 minutes.
Name is...
Our friend here claims to have learned his English chatting up the tourists in the square. And what with his sick mother, dead father, one-legged brother and pregnant sister to support, we could not very well avoid going along for the ride.
This one.
Is statue in Garuda.
That's Garuda.
It's flying.
Yes.
Hippie means is too many people live there.
Yeah.
All is marijuana hashish and very heavy in very one white one and one blue one.
Oh yeah, I see.
And king every day monthly in a god here.
Yeah.
And every day come there and it is puja. You know the puja and take flower, take color. Yes. New king is Mahendra.
Yeah.
Mahendra name is king.
That's the present king, is it?
Yes, it's part of Malla King, and now is dead in London.
Yeah.
Back in big box and come back in fly and fire in the This is a kingdom.
What our friend was telling us about were the Mala, or wrestler kings, that used to rule the various city-states that comprised Nepal from ancient times up until the 18th century. At that time, the Gurkhas came out of the mountains and united the area under their rule. Nepal then comprised of huge expanses of Tibet and India, until in the early 19th century they were defeated by the Chinese in the north and the British in the south. The British, though, were so impressed with the Gurkhas that they've had Gurkha regiments in their army ever since.
No, but I think it's in the right direction.
Where are we? I don't know.
Yes, I am now. Let's hang out.
The Pashupatinath is the most important Hindu temple in Nepal. It is of special significance to the Nepali royal family, being the place most of them end up in. In short, this is Nepal's Westminster Abbey.
We can take decent pictures.
Some people are just not impressed by modern technology. But others just cannot get enough.
On TV.
We're walking down to Gureshwari Temple, which is dedicated to Shiva's Shakti in her terrible manifestation as Kali. But we can't go inside this one either.
we are now walking to the Bodh Nath, or the Temple of Buddha. This one is the largest in Nepal, and probably the largest in the world. And once again, there seems to be some relationship between this one and Song Zeng Gampo and his wife.
It's 15 kilometres outside of the centre of Kathmandu, and well, we thought it was in the dead centre before we arrived here, but apparently it's not. It's not the central part of Kathmandu at all. We've had a rather grueling trek through rapacious tourist hunting salesmen who keep telling us it's off season, and so consequently they'll give us a good price, and we're desperate because it's off season. So God knows what it'd be like when it's on season. We could have filmed several bodies being cremated, but we declined this since we thought in the end all the relatives would come and charge us for the film rights. We braved monkeys and went through what seems to be the suburbs of Kathmandu, where I suppose they're building slums, really, essentially.
And where are we now, Rose?
I've
At this
told you,
moment?
we're at the Buddha Nath. Oh
Yes,
no,
but
we're in the I don't know, a cafe.
On a rooftop cafe.
On a rooftop cafe, opposite the stupa. And we're about to enjoy, well, we hope we will enjoy vast quantities of liquid and cheese tomato sandwiches. We found the tomatoes and cheese in this neck of the woods. Pretty good stuff.
Okay. Now, a view from the roof. Bananas. As every shopkeeper, stallholder in this part of the world knows, Western tourists live on bananas. Oh, cheers, Justin. Okay, we are in, or we're about to be in, Bhaktapur. And Bhaktapur was the capital of the valley of this region in the 14th and 16th centuries.
I can't.
Minutes.
Yeah.
And what they do, how much they pay, you can see everything.
Ganesh.
Bhaktapur, with the help of German money, has turned itself into a cosy little tourist trap where hustlers, beggars, and the odd genuine craftsman give the hard sell to the tourists.
You can see the finished one, just finished one.
Although seemingly uncrowded, one still found that the best thing to do was to get out of the way and watch the people pass by.
I'm in Cafe Nyatapula, which is in the heart of the Batapur. And I'm just about to have some.
But you can't hide for long, and as soon as your cover is broken, you have to get moving before you are surrounded by would-be guides, flute sellers, drummers, artists, and just people wanting to know who you are, where are you from, and whether you might donate something to their education, football team, or sick mother.
I have to get the guidebook out.
Okay.
This is 30-meter height.
On top of the world, huh?
Hong Kong?
Yep.
The two of us doesn't.
On top of the world, huh?
Hong Kong?
Yep.
The two of us doesn't.
We're in Durban Square in Patan, the south of the river from Kathmandu.
Yeah.
देखिए देख साइली दिखे
Fun?
There's a step.
I love this
If it's the full moon, then there is supposed to be some special chariot procession around here. But I don't know if this is the full moon. It's just someone out on the street there kept saying something about chariots, but not where, so... Yes, and where are we going to? We're going to a Buddhist temple, which is way, way, way up on the hill behind us. Its name begins with an S and ends with a Th, and I can't remember what joins up in the middle. Can you remember?
No, I haven't a clue.
Okay.
It's called the Swayambhu Nath, or the Monkey Temple. This place was supposed to have been an island when the valley was a great lake, and 2,000 years ago, the Emperor Ashoka of India paid a visit to the temple.
Yes, we're about to make the ascent.
This was our last stop in Nepal, and despite the friendliness of the people, their constant clamour for our money kept us strangely distant from them. We left, clutching our bags full of sapphires, corals and carpets, but with little love for the place.
We're going to make our descent now, before it falls down with rain.
We've arrived from Kathmandu, Bangkok. Now we're in Florence, and thoroughly exhausted. But well, it was a very, seemed to be, I don't know, 48 hours or something. I don't know, it seems to go on and on and on and on. And a troublesome train ride, largely on the basis that we've got so much luggage we just could not find a place to put it. So people were clambering over our luggage saying, "Why don't you put this somewhere?" I'm saying, "No, that's it." Anyway, we're here now. It's all rather sunny and strangely quiet.
Florence, I suppose, is the Kathmandu of Europe. It's full of old stuff and tourists.
It may be 5 o'clock, but it's baking hot here, so I'm trying to stay in the shade whilst Lawrence is trying to go out and cook.
That's right.
Scusi.
You okay?
Now we can just shoot you.
One has to go to Venice. It is compulsory. One has to go in a horde and march about the sinking city, soaking up the splendours before they disappear. But it is not really the sublime that entices one, but sheer corn. And so slowly we wind down and slip into the zone where one country passes into another, and we wake up wondering, where on earth are we today?
We're on our way home now. Where's the somersault?
Anything else?